So we're very happy to take questions, all three of us now. I'm going to sit back over there. If you'd like to ask any questions, we've got 10 minutes of questions before we have coffee. So please ask Phillip, Ruth or me. And if you could possibly say who you are when you stand up, and then we'll address your question to any one of us. Thank you.
A small breeder, bred a few winners. Very much looking forward to winning the Gold Cup in either national hunt or flat racing. We've had a little bit of success over the years with breeding stayers, and had the happy state of mind to see them go on not only perhaps as 3-year-olds, but even maturing into 4, 5, 6 and 7-year-old flat horses. Now, it seems to me that if you're going to encourage owners to have stayers, you want their success and their fun out of it to go on for a number of years, not to be a 3-year-old stayer which then gets put into the breeding industry. I think it's important that both fillies and geldings go on for longer, and I just wonder if any of you have any suggestions how we could encourage this trend so that horses have a longer period, and particularly fillies perhaps, have a chance to prove themselves.
Ruth, do you want to answer that first?
I completely agree with you. It's clear to see from the evidence that stayers do tend to have a longer career. It's actually one of the, going back to Philip's earlier messages, it's one of the selling points of having a stayer. They can often take longer to get to the racetrack, perhaps to be slower to develop on occasions, but they do have an extended career, and I think, as I say, going back to Philip's earlier message, it's one of the points that we should be promoting as a plus point for actually targeting those kind of animals.
I think we've identified that the 3-year-old is the sort of threshold for the stayers, so we need to give them a really good program with the handicaps, with getting some of these races lined up, the pattern races lined up. But I think you make a very good point. We mustn't forget the fact that we squeeze out the old horses. Every time we make a race 3-year-old only, the 4-year-olds don't have anywhere to go. So I think that's a very good point. We'll pick it up in our thinking.
I do think it's actually happening. I mean, I'm coming back to my influence in the mix again. You can see a clear program developing. I think that what is important is that we start an education program as far as potential owners are concerned. They need to understand the facts and the reality of buying a 5-furlong horse, a 8-furlong horse, or a 10-furlong horse, or a 12-furlong horse. And that if you're buying a racehorse, maybe you have to bite on the bullet a bit when you buy a horse that potentially stays to get it into the racing program, because they take a little bit longer, but they'll last a great deal longer. So we agree with you.
Yeah, Peter.
Peter Stanley, can I just start by thanking you and commending BHA and TBA? I think it's really brilliant just how much work you're doing. Often we talk about these things and nothing happens, and what you're doing is going to make a big difference. But one of the problems we have as commercial breeders, and I suspect a lot of us in this room are commercial, we have to make a living out of the game. And the bottom line is, when we go to the sales, people want to see our sharp, early sprinting 2-year-old types. And that is the problem. We need to get the buyers and the bloodstock agents, Ruth mentioned this briefly, to be interested in those horses. And that is how it's a chicken and egg situation. You're putting on this great program, which I think will definitely help. But we, the breeders, have got to produce staying horses for you. And we will only do that if we think we can make money, or at least make as much money as by breeding a sprinter. So how do we deal with that? It's a difficult area. You've touched on a little bit of extra prize money here and there. I think the +10 is a really important scheme for doing it. At the moment, the +10 scheme is great. It encourages people to breed sharp horses. You're introducing more 3-year-old races. But I believe if you put a significant amount of money, and I'm not talking about £300,000, I'm talking more like £2 or £3 million into it. If you could support staying races, 3-year-old staying races, not just the 2-year-old races, if you could win multiple races for 3-year-olds and stayers, 10 furlongs and beyond, I think you could make a dramatic difference. And I think you could get owners saying to their trainers and their bloodstock agents, I want a stayer. I don't want a whizzy 2-year-old. Get me a stayer, because we can have a lot of fun. A friend of mine has won two or three plus 10 prizes. They picked up 50 grand. And I think that is an area where you can really make a difference for not a dramatic amount of money. You know, you're talking about $500,000 for this Group 1 race, $500,000 for that. But actually, if we could win multiple prizes on plus 10, I think when we go to sell our wares at the sales, people will come and look at them. I sold a lovely staying colt last year. Edmund Marnie came to see it before the sale, said it was the nicest looking yearling he'd seen for book 2. When push came to shove, I knew I was going to be in trouble. I had 2 buyers interested in it, only 2 who came back. Mark Prescott, who loves buying stayers, and John Foote looking for a Melbourne Cup horse. That sums up a commercial breeder's problem. And you have got to make the buyers, which is the bloodstock agents and the trainers, want to buy a staying horse, and that's what we've got to achieve.
Thank you very much. I mean, everything that Ruth's doing is turning the ship. I totally accept. I think we are thinking we're going to have a forum. We're going to ask a number of people to come along and have a think tank, and I think Phillip referred to sort of go left field. We need 1 or 2 game changers in there. That's an interesting concept that you're bringing up there. I'm a terrific believer, once you've got a scheme, develop the scheme, don't keep producing other ones. So I think you're giving me a steer there, which I think is very helpful, and that we'll feed that definitely into our thinking.
The plus 10 scheme is absolutely great, and I couldn't agree with you more. Don't get rid of the scheme, just tweak it. At the moment it's encouraging 2-year-olds, let's tweak it to encourage 3-year-old stayers. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I do think that for the first time, certainly in my memory, there is now prize money that is flexible, and that we are able to direct it into areas where we want to influence change. And I am absolutely certain that there is a commitment in all of the bodies to achieve that.
I think, yeah, just briefly in response to that, Peter, thank you. I mean, great to hear you say all of those things, and really helpful. I think I mentioned, you said chicken and egg, absolutely right. I mentioned a multi-pronged attack, taking time to try and change people's attitudes and behaviour. I don't think there's a silver bullet there. I mean, what you've suggested could potentially be one, but I do think, changing the race programme to make people sit up and take notice, having some sort of breeders' voucher scheme, some sort of breeders' incentive, whatever that looks like, which we've touched on, should make a difference. Improvement in prize money, improvement at the top end to kind of get those flagship races noticed more. Improving the programme across all dimensions, all of that is going to help. But you're absolutely right. Without having something meaningful to change the bloodstock agents' attitude, for instance, I recognise you're trying to push water uphill, and we've got a job to do.
Yes, Chris.
Hi, Chris Richardson, Cheveley Park Stud. For 42 years we've been producing sprinters, and so we're very much in that category. However, I tried. I stood Sadler's Hall, we stood Benny the Dipper, Derby winner, we stood Rudimentary. We have tried to encourage breeders to expand their use of our facilities. We've seen Workforce, we've seen Criskin, we've seen a number of Derby winners all go abroad because, quite frankly, I echo Peter's incentive, because it's not just the owners, it's the breeders who have got to be convinced of supporting our breeding operations, that we can stand up and go out and acquire and staying stallions, Derby winners that will be duly supported, and that is one of the biggest problems that we have. Yes, it's encouraging bloodstock agents, yes, it's encouraging trainers, but it really starts with us. The breeders have got to come along to us and embrace the fact that we are going to stand a staying horse. We are still breeding staying horses ourselves, but yes, if there could be a fundamental improvement in the prize money at that level to give the breeders the opportunity to saying, right, come on, let's go and support. I mean, it's fantastic that Nathaniel, for example, has had an Oaks winner in his first crop. Yeah. You know, he's a horse that in December there were a number of people who were thinking, oh, this is a horse for, who's going to no longer be of interest to the flat game, which was so wrong. We've seen a Derby winner this year, by Pour Moi, who is covering national hunt mares and has not been given a chance, and he outstayed obviously some fantastic horses. And you're quite right, the game is and has shortened up. But I do suggest that if on the back of Peter's suggestion and the good things that I'm hearing, if we can encourage the breeders at the end of the day to come and support ourselves, who are prepared to go out and buy in a very competitive world and offer to stand stallions, then I think that would be a huge incentive.
Thank you. Thank you for the support. I mean, there is no quick fix, but you're absolutely right. We have to keep working at this. But obviously, we would like to have one or two, headline-grabbing ideas, and I think Peter's put up one. We have one or two others in our thoughts. Do you want to say anything?
Phillip Newton has touched on the fact that we're going to get some more money from the levy, or it's not the levy anymore, but from betting. Could I suggest that breeders' prizes should go on the agenda, not for group races, but for the ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill race that ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill breeders like me have runners in? I've been lucky enough to win 2 +10 races. Money was very nice, but it was the feeling that you were appreciated that was so important. If we could have some of the money, the new money coming into racing, diverted to breeders' prizes, not vast sums, 1,000 would be lovely, £500 would be very gratefully received. That, I think, would be an extreme incentive to keep breeders in the game.
Thank you. Breeders' prizes, we lost breeders' prizes basically because as the levy money declined, they were getting so small and so spread around, it didn't seem worth continuing with them. So that's why we headed off down to the +10 and MOPS route. But I think we have been thinking about this. There is considerably more money coming into racing. I actually think it'd be an interesting thought for the race courses if they want to try to bring more horses for each race. They could start thinking of other ideas. An enormous number of horses are fully owned or partly owned by breeders, particularly fillies, and it's a real opportunity for race courses. But yes, breeders' prize is certainly on our list. Yes. That's good.
Point over long distances. Are these going to be handicap races or weight for age?
So for 3-year-olds, we're doing both. But we're very conscious that the slower maturing 3-year-old is probably handicapping for nearly even the horse that's going to be a Group 3 or Group 2 horse could still be handicapped. But they're valuable handicaps. They're as Ruth put up, £50,000 handicaps towards the end of the season. And so I think that horse rated 90-95, which can be a very good horse, probably mature into a group horse next year. We're running quite a few races for those, as well as the March Stakes and others. But you want to talk about it?
Yeah, no, I mean, both is the answer, simple answer to your question.
Anybody else? One more, and I think then we'll have a coffee break.
Thank you. David Taylor, very small breeder. I do suspect that we might be just tinkering along the edges with the stayers. It's not just prize money that restricts sales of staying horses. It's the fact that you can you can run a stair 6 times a year and a sprinter 6 times a month. And I think trainers like to see their owners going to the races and keeping them happy. But we're doing the best we can. From a personal point of view, I have a little mare who does well with Danehill line stallions, and this year I was hoping to go to either Mount Nelson or Champs-Élysées. They've both gone to Ireland now, and there are no other Danehill line stallions in the country, at a reasonable price anyway. Can't afford down silly. I think the stallion owners need to be encouraged to keep stallions like that in the country, especially when there's such short supply of Danehill line stallions, or any particular line. You need to encourage that line of that bloodline.
And I think Chris Richardson is right. They're not going to stand stallions that they don't get supported, and that's Ireland seems to have a different attitude, and that's what they head off over there. Of course, both of those have gone to be national hunt stallions, really, as such. But we need to turn this corner. We need to encourage people to have the stallion owners to stand stallions over here that won over a mile and a half and are capable of producing staying horses. But it's not going to happen overnight. But that's what we're all trying to do.
I'd be disappointed to think that we were just tinkering around the edges. I think that we are actually jumping in and making some big differences. However, what I would say is that having seen the brief for the TBA Stayers Working Party, there is an encouragement in it to left field think, and that there will be, with the additional resources that are available, perhaps an opportunity to do something that is quite radical and that will solve the problems that you're talking about.
Yeah, maybe that was too strong to say tinkering around the edges. But you're trying lots of little things, and that's good. But I just tend to feel that when you've got a professional trainer out there and he's trying to keep owners happy, the majority of owners want a quick answer. And as most people do in this modern world, they're not prepared to wait. And yes, we should be doing everything we can, and we are, just as you are, to encourage the stayers. I prefer stayers myself. But in the real world, I think the figures that you've got there will probably stay. If you can halt the decline, yes. But I don't think it's going to be moving upwards. But to halt the decline, yes, great.
That's not enough of an aim. We want to go forward. Thank you very much. I think we'll break for coffee for 20 minutes now. There'll be time to ask questions right at the end of the morning session as well. Thank you.